Okay, so we should be live now. And so, welcome to Digression from the Theme. The format's a little different looking today just because we have a window up. Because I've been watching a whole bunch of Flat Earth stuff, and I find it fascinating how. Just the whole thing is just fascinating. There's this big claim to believing in the scientific method, or just science in general, but they've misdefined science. And I haven't talked to you a whole lot about this yet, just because it's been a sort of recent kick. But um, a lot of them that I've heard actually define science as using your senses to
Oh,
make a
okay.
determination. They don't
Oh,
define it as a process of experimentation.
right,
They
right.
literally say whatever your senses tell you, that's science.
Oh, how interesting.
and and most of science is not believing your senses and going one step further because we can't see microbes,
No,
but they're
right, right.
there.
Yeah, I mean, your senses are just the absolute beginning
Yeah,
of where, but it has nothing to something to do with science. I mean, without your senses, you wouldn't know to look.
well, you're right.
But but beyond that, you can't trust your senses. You can't see ultraviolet light. If that were the case, then it wouldn't exist because you
Exactly.
can't
and
see it.
and it's the worst kind of testimony in court. So I figured today we would start. I mean, I've got some other stuff we could talk about on the docket, but I figured we
Yeah.
would start by watching and commenting on. And I'm not going to call it like a full debunk, but I just think it's worth talking about to to see a lot of the really common arguments that are made by flat earthers,
Mhm.
and to just sort of talk them down a little bit, because
Yeah.
to me they don't sound logical. Like they're like, use your common sense, and I'm like, common sense tells me you're wrong. Uh, but I'm a scientific minded person, and so are you. So there's a few people, one of which is, and I tried to pick the most sort of ubiquitous in the flat Earth community,
Uh-huh.
who has some, he at least speaks authoritatively to some degree. There are other ones who are just absurd, like one who lives in Hawaii and thinks volcanoes are a myth. Um,
Oh,
oh, there's so many.
okay.
There are
All
so
right.
many places this goes.
I,
It's
I,
absolutely
out of
absurd.
all the places on the planet to deny the existence of volcanoes, depends. I guess it depends on how you define them.
Well, no,
But
like he just doesn't believe that conical mountains spew lava. He thinks it's physically impossible based on like the laws of thermodynamics, and he
oh, but
claims that
oh,
volcano. He claims rock melts at 600 degrees Fahrenheit,
mm,
and so essentially, if the magma was coming up at 3,000
mm,
degrees, it would melt the mountain. That's part of his
mm.
claim. It's
Oh,
so
oh,
they always get
that's
their numbers wrong.
weird. Oh well, yeah, that's
They always get them
yes.
wrong.
So apparently, science isn't math, and math isn't science.
Well, they
Um,
think
oh,
they're using math and science though, but they get
yeah,
the wrong formulas, which means they
yeah,
get the wrong results, and they trust
yeah,
the wrong formulas
yeah.
because
That's weird.
there's a book of wrong formulas
So
essentially that they
let
read.
me ask a question. That glowing substance, that thick glowing substance that's spewing, even I think as we speak, from one of the Hawaiian volcanoes, that's not magma. It's
Well,
something
he
else.
still believes in magma, I think,
He
but
believes in magma.
he
I
claims
believe in magma.
that Mount St. Helens is just ash. It's an ash mountain. That it just spews ash, that there's no molten rock involved in the equation. But
Well,
I'll pull
okay.
up a video for you at
Oh,
some point
well,
of
all right.
that.
Well,
Maybe not
so
tonight,
it's
but
not necessarily volcanoes. There's some nuance to it, I
yeah.
guess.
Well, I don't think
I mean,
he understands, but um,
whatever it is, he objects to it.
yes, he objects to it
Okay.
fairly firmly.
Oh,
Um,
well, there you go.
so the person we're going to listen to today is called Eric Dubé. A lot of people will refer to him when they're talking about flat Earth. He gets a lot of people into flat Earth through YouTube videos like this, which I think is problematic. There's a lot of very gullible people out there, and if they trust the wrong information in just the wrong way,
Mm,
you can turn them into something else. But
mm.
so I'm gonna start the video and I'll pause it. Feel free
Okay.
to call
Whenever you
out
want.
and
Okay.
make me pause it
All
if
right.
there's something you want to attack.
All right. Well, no,
Otherwise,
I would never attack something. I
oh,
might
we're gonna
comment.
attack it. All right.
True Facts versus Modern Theories was published in 1895 by William Carpenter. Compare the following startling discrepancies between the true
Startling
facts and the modern
discrepancies.
theories, and
True
then say if
facts.
it is not a national disgrace that we should
National
prefer such
disgrace.
baseless superstitions for the mere
Baseless
credit's sake of a few
superstitions.
infidel scientists.
A few
Why does he
infidel
use the word
scientists.
infidel?
I don't know. That's such a weird. That's weird. He sounds a little bit like Ed Wood from the 1950s. I feel like I've stepped back into some bad sci-fi movie that's about to tell me everything that I know is not so.
And
But
I'm pretty sure he's religious, but infidel is just a weird word to use there.
it doesn't apply unless you consider your version of science to be a sort of a religion, or I mean, taking things on faith, so to speak.
Well,
Okay.
actually, I think they do. They call it scientism.
Oh, okay.
They say that we're taking faith on the well of 400 years of scientific knowledge. They say that's our faith. Anybody who doesn't
Oh,
believe in flat Earth is a scientismist, I guess.
I don't know, but it almost sounds like I don't want to get off on a tangent, but
That's what we do.
short one. It sounds a little bit like the question of revelation in in Christian theology, right? That some people say revelation stopped at a particular moment. That's the common belief, and others might allow that revelation can be more continuous than that. And this person seems to think that scientific discovery as of a certain date stops, and nothing beyond that is it's no longer orthodoxy. I use that word because I want to use a religious sort of word there. But
Well,
okay,
they
well,
also, just to preface this, a lot of them make the claim that flat Earth has been an idea that was commonly accepted in the world for like the last 2,000 years. And they completely just ignore the fact that around Earth has been the consensus for, what, 3,000 years? Something like
no,
that?
it's a long. That's a long.
It's
It's been a long
always
time.
been fringe. Flat Earth has been fringe for a long time.
Yeah,
And they
yeah.
ignore that a lot of the time. And they'll make fun of the people who say otherwise.
Well, maybe it's better to be fringe than be ignored. I don't know.
I think they're just trying to get attention. I think a lot of them
Yeah,
might
right,
actually
right.
just be trolls, honestly.
I wouldn't. I wouldn't doubt anything at this point.
I think
Go
there's
ahead.
a mix, so I'll play it.
Modern astronomy and its crafty or most deluded sycophants teach that the
Crafty.
sun is
Oof.
stationary and the center of the planetary or celestial bodies, and that it is over 1 million miles larger than the Earth. Whereas,
Gonna pause it again here. Who claims the sun is stationary?
I don't know.
I mean, sort of in a relative sense, if you take all the planets into account, it's relatively stationary compared to the orbits of the planets, but everything's moving. I just wanted to
Everything's
note that.
relative to everything else. No, right, right,
It's
right.
all
Like,
straw mans. 100% straw mans. You're gonna see that.
oh yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
it is not 1,000th part of its size, is constantly moving in spiral orbits, round and over the face of the motionless Earth, increasing the latitude of those orbits about 10 or 11 miles every day, from June to December, and decreasing them in the same proportion from December to June. The astronomers now teach that the sun's distance from the Earth is from 92 to 93 million miles, whereas it is
A
proved to
little
be
more than that,
under
actually.
2,400 miles.
Okay, they do this a lot, right? He says it is proved to be less than 2,400 miles. Where, when, how?
I'd say by whom?
Yeah, it was not. They will never actually cite appropriate proof that was done this way. Now, one example, he might bring this up with the moon. But they would say that it is proven that the moon is only 70 miles wide. That it is proven. They will claim this to the ends of their flat Earth, and their reasoning for this is they say that a shadow cannot be smaller than the object casting it. You can debunk that in your backyard with a whiteboard, a ball, and a flashlight. And has been done hundreds of times, like on YouTube, by just people who don't like listening to this, where if you take the flashlight, you put the ball in one place, and you move them, eventually you will get a vaguer shadow around a central smaller shadow.
Well, I think the point they're going for there is illustrated in the graphic you have up there. That is, if an object is sufficiently far away, it's the rays that we receive are essentially parallel.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why they've got that picture underneath of the distortions that happen late in the day when you get the sun shining up into the clouds, basically, because it's now about to set or within maybe an hour of setting. But of course, you would want an alternate description of or reasoning for what is observed near sundown or sun up. If what you're saying is the sun doesn't actually go around the earth, the side of the earth.
But you're not allowed to use the words refraction.
Oh, okay.
Because they will yell at you for using the word refraction or distortion.
Why is that?
Because
I'm just curious.
Because Occam's rug, it gets in the way of their argument, so sweep it under the rug.
Oh, well, okay. So I have to stop there, because how else would one explain the fact that eyeglasses focus light, and you can actually see the change in light rays if you simply shoot through air with some mist in it.
Oh,
you can actually observe that.
They won't deny that refraction does exist. However, they will deny that it has anything to do with the ability to prove around Earth.
In other words, you have to buy 100% with no question their explanation for a phenomenon which supports their case.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
All right.
And that's the way
I know what the rules are.
things.
Okay, all right. Okay, I think that's just exactly how science works.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And the stars and planets even less than that. So far from the Earth being a planet and, quote, very much inferior in size to all the other
Quote.
planets but Mars, it is no part at all of the celestial system, but is wholly distinct and far superior in size and character to all the planets put together, which exhibit very little variety in size among themselves.
Where is he getting that claim?
I don't know.
Like he's claiming that there's no variety in size between the planets when we've got Saturn and Jupiter and Pluto.
When you put them on the screen and you size them to the screen.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
you
probably
make them
does look
similar that way.
Yeah, they look very similar. They're all a little oval shaped though, because they've been distorted with the CGI.
Oh yeah, and they of course they won't trust any picture of anything taken in space. So the reason it's so hard to really sort of debunk them a lot of the time is that they won't accept the actual evidence. And it's very hard to experiment to do stuff like to prove gravity on Earth without using presupposition and knowledge we already have, right? It's difficult.
Yeah.
It's difficult to do it to them.
Yeah. Well,
but I'll get into it. I have a few ways of bringing them down. But
you talk about gravity just for 10 seconds. Just get on an elevator and stand on a scale. And start at the 100th floor and go down.
Oh, but
right?
they believe in acceleration. You'll see their arguments about this stuff. It'll come up, and we'll get to that.
Okay.
And no
gravity doesn't exist
whatsoever
anyway.
When viewed,
you're aware gravity doesn't exist anyway, but that's another story.
Viewed under any possible conditions. The astronomers again assert the Earth to be a revolving and rotating globe with an axial speed of over 1,000 miles an hour, and an orbital speed of over 1,000 miles per minute, whereas it is an absolutely motionless plane, surrounded by a barrier of impassable icebergs, extending into unknown regions where day and night come to an end, or in other words, cease to be distinguished, and will only be removed when there shall be no more sea, and a new firmament and a new earth shall replace this sin-stained and misused world.
There's the religious
That,
undertones, right?
that's no undertone, man. That has
Overture.
broken through the surface. Yeah, that's a veritable geyser
Yeah.
of theological fallacy.
The floodgate came right through there. So
Yeah, I like the geyser thing. I'm thinking it really. They
It's a
try to
good
keep it under, but even his tone and his use, many of his use of phraseology is all very religious
he
sounding.
uses a zealous vocabulary, a very
Yeah,
one of zealotry. But
yeah,
so just to go that picture he was just pointing at, right?
yeah.
Which I can go back to it really quick.
Oh, the one of the ice wall.
No, not the ice wall. This one here.
1,000 miles.
Oh, that one. Yeah.
Okay. One of the things that they have a problem with, and they will raise this as a question,
Yeah.
is they like to use the wrong measurements, which are the the axial rotation. They're using surface rotation speed rather than actual rotational speed, which is a different measurement, right? You measure it in degrees. You measure its amount of rotation, not the speed at which a single point on the surface rotates. So the Earth rotates by 15 degrees per hour, right? Now, but they like to say 1,000 miles per hour, because when you scale that down, if you take a basketball like they love to do and try to get the surface to move 1,000 miles an hour, you're not going to get anything to stick to that. And then they argue that if you scale that up, oh my gosh, it's so fast, nothing could stick to this. But you don't keep the same axial rotation speed when you scale something up.
Well, yeah. There's lots of issues with that. Not the least of which is that, however gravity is or isn't defined, the fact is that the Earth is far. If you took a basketball and scaled it up, it'd be full of air, and therefore wouldn't have nearly the mass.
That too. But
so there's a lot of things.
They're using it just as a demonstration of surface, which I get the demonstration they're trying to make. It just doesn't make any logical sense.
No, it is because you have to keep your thought process to be like a millimeter deep. You can't go anywhere into the substance of it at all, because it's so easily and quickly debunked.
Well,
and we've talked about this before. The one thing about how you the fact is that a point on the equator, is going to move at essentially a speed of about 1,000 miles an hour, because in 24 hours it's going to be roughly back in the same place it was when viewed from outside. Right now, but the other thing is everything around it, including the air, is also moving with it.
Yeah.
And just leaving wind out of, because wind is a different thing.
And it's not accelerating.
Well, and
so we're not going to feel it because it's not accelerating.
No, right. And plus, you look at meteorological phenomenon, and this so-called Coriolis effect, which is caused by the rotation of the Earth.
Oh, they love to yell about the Coriolis effect.
I'm sure.
I'm sure there are videos trying to debunk that too. But one of the arguments, maybe this will come up, is, you know what? I think it will come up, so I won't mention it right now. But it's going to come up in a minute, I'm pretty sure. But with the ice wall, I'm sure they deny global warming, but if this ice wall melts, the supposed ice wall, depending on the theory they have, right? Because I think Eric Dubé believes in an infinite plane, that once the ice wall goes down, there's more land masses.
Well, they seem to say there's this unknown territory beyond the ice wall. Well, what is it?
But other ones will say that that's the edge of the Earth, and the only thing that keeps the water in is that ice wall. So what happens with global warming? Are we going to lose the oceans?
Maybe it's not going to melt at the edges, or maybe that's the divine plan
maybe it's
here.
Just,
I don't know.
Maybe there's a brick wall built on the outside.
Another brick in the wall. Yeah.
All
right.
Isn't that a a song or an album by
Oh yeah. Pink Floyd.
Pink Floyd. Yeah.
Yeah. So if we had a crack production staff, we would have that playing now in the
Well, we
background.
couldn't because of copyright.
Well, okay. We'd have to get some kind of licensing. Is that it?
Yeah.
Can we at least say the name of the song?
Yeah, we could say the name of the song. We might even
This
be
is
able
no.
to imitate it badly.
This is no fun. This is just no fun at all. Okay, go ahead.
Sea, and a new firmament and a new earth shall replace this sin-stained and misused world. The astronomers teach an
Sin-stained.
atmospheric pressure of 15 pounds on the square inch, whereas it does not amount to half as many grains. Gravitation, central, is the wildest fiction ever invented. All attraction, solar,
Okay.
lunar, central,
Right here is trying to explain, right, the way that they believe in gravity. They believe that it is all based on density and buoyancy. And they neglect to mention that buoyancy, I'm pretty sure in the formula for buoyancy, there is a big G for gravity. But they don't pay attention to that. So essentially, there are two schools of thought as far as I know. One is that the plane is accelerating upwards constantly. And not just moving upwards, accelerating upwards fast enough
But-
for us to get 1G.
Of course, why not? Why not? And what's the source of that acceleration?
Oh, they don't have an answer for that. God,
You don't know.
which even being religious, I find that completely absurd. Um,
Okay.
and so, they'll show you stuff like this. It's like, oh, yeah, you can measure the difference between these things, but they always neglect to say, what does happen to things like this. Why are they going down? Why down? Why
Yeah,
are they not going up or left or
yeah,
right?
I don't even get the point of this of even bringing density up. I don't even
Essentially, their point is that things will always move to a place of the path of least resistance. So, right,
get it.
if you
So
have
lower density is going to float to the top and higher density to the
yes,
bottom.
but they
because
never
of-
give a reason for the directionality.
Yeah.
And then they show the one on the bottom,
Yeah.
which flipped camera view, right? Which is observable, repeatable, and measurable if you were to go out into orbit holding a camera straight, and you left at the top in the northern hemisphere and went down holding it the same way. When you got to the bottom, things would be flipped.
I just really don't know what to say. I don't know what this illustrates. This illustrates that if something were on the bottom of this flat plane, it would fall off.
Yes, that's what they're
Or-
trying to claim.
Oh, yeah. Well, but that's just an upside down photograph. That doesn't
Yeah.
tell me anything. But it's measurable. It's repeatable because I can take that photograph and flip it over, and it'll flip every time. That's what's repeatable.
Now, I did pick a pretty broad video. A lot of he has a 1 hour documentary
Yeah.
that if you want to do, like a 3 hour stream and tear that apart, we can. Not tonight, obviously.
Oh, I'll
But-
run out of interest in about 30 minutes.
Yeah. So, but
Okay, all
that's why
right.
I picked a short one that's pretty vague.
Okay, that's cool. So we've got density and we've got gravity, and they're apparently not related in any way, except that we can't have an upside down Earth.
Yep.
Okay, so it's the magic gravity on the ball Earth. Okay, magic gravity. All
They
right.
like
Okay.
to make stupid terms.
Well, they're all purposely the terms that support their argument. They think are these things like observable, repeatable, which sound like scientific terms, but of course they're not. And then they use religious terms or things like the word magic to indicate something they don't agree with. But okay.
Eric Dubé at one point calls the ball Earth a like floating scrotum in space. He's not
Okay.
even sensitive. He's not even like careful about it. He just
All
likes
right,
to
the
insult.
floating
the idea.
scrotum Earth, is that?
I can't remember his exact verbiage, but it
Well,
was
okay.
dumb.
All right.
and magnetic is purely conjectural and physically impossible. The astronomers further declare that this globe has no material support, but is sustained and controlled in its terrific orbits by solar attractions only, at a distance of nearly 100 million miles, although
This is a quick one. They like to do stuff like this by floating the same thing or close to the same thing in water and watching one float and one not. Like frozen strawberries. Somebody found a bunch of them and found a couple that apparently didn't have as much water or air pockets in it, so one sank and one floated, and they were like, "This disproves gravity." It's like, how?
Yeah,
That's
it
all I
doesn't.
really had to say.
Yeah, yeah. It doesn't tell. This doesn't tell me anything.
No, it doesn't. How does that confuse gravity? It doesn't.
No,
There's
it
more
doesn't.
air in the orange
Let's
with the
go back.
peel.
Let's go back to density. I thought density and gravity weren't related, but
It's,
now we can confuse gravity, which we said isn't related, by showing two objects that probably have different density.
yeah, there's probably air in the orange with the peel.
And the peel's got, well, yeah, there's oil in the peel, and oil is lighter than water. So
Or they just pushed the other orange down.
who knows?
It's a picture. You can't tell.
No, you
Sir
can't.
Isaac Newton himself declares the idea was, quote, grossly preposterous and discreditable to any rational mind.
Nobody claims that buoyancy and density are theories.
No.
They
I
are
think they're
provable
both.
fact related to gravity.
Was it Archimedes who talked about buoyancy and density and displacement in water, and so on, the eureka moment.
And
Okay.
it seems like he's trying to use the example of two things that look similar, one of which is made of like cloth and the other is made of solid metal.
Yeah, like 4-inch thick steel plate.
And they both have gas in them. It's what is this
buoyancy
comparison?
and density are not theories. Okay, all right. You're right. They're not theories. I think they're
That-
well demonstrated
you know
scientific
what?
facts.
Let's give him credit. He has one correct statement.
Okay. I don't know what this was supposed to prove or not prove, but go ahead. These are specious arguments. They are not related to anything.
Meaning, of course, that the centripetal and centrifugal forces were hypothetical conditions only, and like all the other data on which the Copernican theory was founded.
Okay, this is going to pop up a lot. This is their favorite aphorism, that water always finds its level, and I'm going to get to it when some of the more of these pop up. It's such a stupid thing to say.
Okay.
Were purely geometrical devices, which no one in their sober senses ever thought could be illustrated by an appeal to facts. But such was the ignorance or bigotry of his professional friends that they would not allow even Sir Isaac Newton himself to publish his repeated disclaimers of being anything more than a mathematical inventor or formulator of a system which was in no degree dependent on the truth of his premises. The rank absurd.
Okay. Here is where I'm going to say it. What I kind of wanted to say this whole time. Okay, they like to say that water always finds its level, right? That's like their favorite aphorism. And they show these pictures, right, where it looks level. Of course, you are thinking of scales essentially beyond human comprehension when you're thinking on a sensory basis, right? The Earth is too large for your senses to comprehend it. You can comprehend it with math and with your imagination, but your senses cannot. But there is a way to very clearly disprove within their field of belief that water does not find its level. They acknowledge, and they use this as an excuse, that a plane flying in a parabolic arc can fake 0G. And they claim that that's how astronauts fake stuff, apart from being underwater. They like to use that one too. But these 0G plane flights, which last for 30 seconds, are how they fake 0G. Well, on one of those flights, if you take a bottle of water and you pour it out, what happens to that bottle of water? It makes a sphere. That is water curving, not finding its level, and making a sphere. But that's only one of two arguments, because the other one they like to use is that you can't make water stick to a ball. And if you think about the Earth's scale, if you cover any ball in water that's not completely hydrophobic, the layer of water would probably be thicker in comparison than all of Earth's oceans are in comparison to the Earth. That thin sheen of moisture would be higher away from the center of that ball, proportionally, than the oceans are from the center of the Earth.
Yeah. For first, the reason that water makes a sphere
I know it's surface
for,
tension,
is surface tension. Yeah,
but it still says
but
something about their point.
it says something about nature. It says that the sphere is the perfect shape. It's the shape where you get the most volume and the least surface area,
Yeah.
right? And so there's a tendency in nature for spheres to form. If you shoot magma, which you may or may not believe in, into the air, in some cases you're going to get spherical glass. What do they call them? There's actually a word for these little glass spheroids that you find all over the place, near a volcano or if you get a meteor hit or something. But I think the broader point is that water doesn't stick to the surface of the earth. It is held in place by the same thing that holds us in place.
Right.
Right.
But
Period. End.
being unable to use that argument with people like this, right?
Oh, no, right.
Provides a certain difficulty, but by circumventing that difficulty and using other means that they accept, you can debunk them and still be
I get what you're
factual
saying. Yeah, I get what you're
without
saying.
citing gravity.
So for them, the oceans are really contained in a very large
Bowl.
tub,
Yeah.
right, or a tub or bowl that's defined by the ice walls.
Yep.
And no particular explanation why the ice walls don't melt or what keeps them in place.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay.
It's all very goofy.
Yeah, it's all very goofy. It is. It is.
Absurdity and downright impossibility of any one of its most elementary conditions, and the fact that no man of honor or scientific reputation would venture openly to defend it, ought to secure the instant rejection of it by every lover of truth in the world.
I love
The whole thing
Photoshop
lies in a
level,
nutshell.
which
All that is
even looking at a level like that, the water is in balls. The water is curving because of the air bubble. It's like
it's so funny. It's funny that they've got a globe, on this graphic, and once again they're scaling things up and down that don't, in a way that doesn't work.
Oh, yeah.
I actually I would make the argument that if you could measure sufficiently closely or precisely, you could see the curvature in a lake. It's just, to your point, that human perception cannot see, curvature at these scales. You just cannot see it.
There is a lake. I think it's Lake Minnewanka. I think it's in Canada, where from one shore to the other, you actually can't see the shore.
It's wide. It's wide enough that you can.
Yeah. There's. I think it's like 6 miles long or something straight up, and so you actually can't see the shore from one side to the other.
Lake Ontario, you can't see the shore from one side to the other.
Yeah, and
I think on an extraordinarily clear day, I'm depending on where you are, but it have to be crazy clear. It might be a winter day. It's possible, I think, to see with binoculars to see the CN Tower, but the CN Tower is like the third or fourth highest street freestanding structure in the world.
Yeah,
or at least used to be before the Burj Khalifa. But
and
so yeah, but you can prove that on any of the big lakes.
well, they also like to use bad examples. Like, this is just bad observation, to try to debunk it with boats, right? Because if a boat goes far enough away, it'll sink beneath the horizon. But what they'll do is they'll take a picture of a boat, and then they'll wait a while it goes out, and then they'll find a different boat that's still close enough that you can see the whole boat, and they look vaguely similar. But then you have videos that are like 100 different boats going out, like oil tankers, where all you can see is the top of the cargo. And it's like, oh, where's the rest of the boat?
Yeah.
It's all very silly. The
Yeah, I
amount
know.
of Occam's rug going on here is staggering.
Again, theoretically, if the Earth were in fact flat, if you had the right vantage point, you could see the other side of the world.
Yeah, you could. I don't think there's any claim anywhere of somebody from ground level, even in somewhere like Kansas, where it's super flat land, seeing several hundred miles away. Even though by the topography you should be able to on certain clear days, you're just not going to. It doesn't work that way.
You show me a laser shot from ice wall A in what we might call Alaska to ice wall B in Antarctica, right?
Well, no,
Wouldn't it be
it's
possible?
all the ice wall is all Antarctica.
Oh, I see. Okay, so
Because if you look at the projection maps, the South Pole wraps all the way around the planet because it's taking a globe. So the North Pole's in the center, and the South
I
Pole is
see. Oh,
all the way
that's
around.
convenient.
Yep.
So if I stood facing east, I should be able to shine a laser on the west side of the ice wall.
Yeah. Or you should at least be able to hit the North Pole. Or from the top of Mount Everest, you should
Because the
be able
optics are
to
not,
see
the optics wouldn't be
anywhere
in.
on the planet.
Yeah. Well, how do we explain mountains? Do they explain mountain formation at all in this?
I
Probably
don't
not.
think they really get into tectonics. It's one
They
thing that I
can't.
don't think
It's
they
not.
ever deal with.
It would be impossible because without this being spherical, what's going to cause things to move?
Uh,
And density. It's all about density.
God passing gas? I don't know.
That's always possible. Never discount the gaseous God
Yeah, the
theory.
gaseous God, God of the gas, uh, instead of God of the gaps.
River gas.
So we probably won't go all the way through this video because I do have some other stuff I want to talk about. But
That's fine.
Is insisted upon is that results or conclusions drawn from conjectural theories of philosophy, however plausible and apparently simple they may be, are wholly worthless and unworthy of any claim to rank as true science, till they have been proved correct.
I hate this. I hate it. I just have to say how much I hate it. The water doesn't curve statement is so dumb, and it's the basis for 80% of their beliefs.
It becomes the basis of the argument.
Yeah. And when you start with a fallacy,
Well, so
that
the
hard.
answer is A is I can't see the water curve. B, I think we'd all agree that the Earth is about 70% water. At least the surface is, not the entire Earth.
Right.
It's just the surface. And C is that there should be a stroke through that equal sign because it doesn't equal anything. Okay, fine, whatever.
By actual experimental demonstration, and can be
Where is
thus
it?
confirmed
Where is
and
it?
illustrated
Where?
as often as their truth is challenged or
What is that
denied.
Where?
supposed to say?
Even if a theory be true in the abstract, yet, if incapable of practical demonstration, it is
Essentially, what they want us to do is build a replica Earth in order to prove gravity. That's the only
So
way
this-
we could do it to their specifications.
So they're saying this is the ball Earth, devoid of water, and how can the water possibly stick to this?
Yeah, it's all about
It's-
refusal of gravity.
It's two-dimensional thinking, is what it is.
Okay, if that.
Well, I mean, length and width. Well, there's some height, but there isn't curvature. Well, can you imagine what they would make out of Einstein in this space-time and
Oh,
curvature of space
they mock Einstein all the time. They mock Einstein. They mock Hawking. They mock Copernicus. They mock
Okay,
everybody.
good enough. All right. Okay, well, they're better men than me. Better men and women, I suppose. Do you think most flat earthers are men? I think they are. I haven't done a survey.
I think it's a fair number, but I have seen some women, and the women that I've seen actually seem to have crazier opinions.
Okay.
Interestingly enough, this is a slight aside here. There's one who claims that the pictures from Cassini, I think it's Cassini that took pictures of Saturn.
Saturn or Jupiter?
But
I think both, actually.
they claimed that when the pictures came back of Saturn, whatever spacecraft it was,
Yeah, it
that
was
they were
Saturn.
fake. And their reasoning behind that
Mhm.
was that a picture cannot be taken if it is not being directly observed by a human. Because, in their opinion, the way that light works is that light starts as a wave until it hits your eye, at which point it becomes a photon and reflects back into the camera and turns it into a picture.
Oh.
They were claiming that the observation of humanity is responsible for all saved images
Oh,
ever
interesting.
and they were citing the observer effect.
Like Heisenberg uncertainty,
Yes.
that thing?
Yes. They were saying because
apparently
of that,
they didn't read the whole paper.
because of that, no automaton can ever take a photo unless a human is looking through the picture. Have they never taken a selfie? Because you are not looking at the other side of the screen.
Or use the timer on your camera.
Exactly. It made no sense, and I was like, this is outrageous. But like I said, those are the caliber of theories I've heard.
Well, this thought process is like a millimeter deep. That's all I can say.
Like you said, it's two-dimensional. It has no depth.
It has none at all, right?
None.
It has no.
Ugh.
It's not science,
Okay.
merely to
You're right.
suppose or assert
Thank
it
you.
to
It
be
is
true.
not science.
Newton
Thank you.
himself was too sound a philosopher to attempt to illustrate the truth of the globular theory. He repeatedly
globular
discouraged all discussion, and if left to himself, would
This is fantasy. A picture from far away. This is
An actual
reality.
picture of the
A
Earth,
picture
yeah.
taken closer.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
And
that's funny.
I bet, even it, like, let's say this is taken with a perfect aperture and no fish lens or no fisheye lens or anything, that if you really measure that line at the end, you can find, 1/100th of a degree of curve.
Yeah,
you can
you're
find
right.
It. It's there.
You're right. Without knowing the precision, the lens itself. But the new modern cameras do record that metadata. But you're right. You're right. But and the picture on the top looks to me to be an actual picture of the Earth, where the northeast, the north of the eastern part of the U.S. is at nighttime.
Yeah, but they're
So
not
it-
going to believe that.
I don't care. But what they use that what they use that picture for then? Is it just good CGI? Maybe
Well,
yes.
they don't think that any picture taken from space is real. They think they're all CGI.
Yeah, you've
Even the
told me
ones
that, yeah.
taken before CGI existed.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Fine. This. I'm sorry, but I'm going to speak for all of humanity, for all of its ills. Right. This is like saying the Egyptians did not build the pyramids. Must have been aliens because they just couldn't do it. It's just not possible.
You don't
Well,
give enough credit to people.
There's prima facie evidence. They're there.
Yeah.
Right. There's tool marks in the stones. We know they did them.
And
They
we
drew
don't
pictures.
We don't have
They're-
radioactive scorch marks on the ground from ships landing.
There are hieroglyphs and carvings and paintings and tombs that show them building, for heaven's sakes. Give me a freaking break. We're able to do these things. All right,
Yep.
onward.
would never have attached his name or sanction to such a bungling absurdity.
Bungling.
This is the ground on which the Zetetics take their stand, and all the
Zetetics. What
professors
the
in
hell
the
are
King-
Zetetics?
Okay. Zetetics are, I'm just going to say it, the idiots who follow the book of Zetetic astronomy, okay? Which is the Flat Earth Bible, as most people call it.
Oh, okay.
And now one reason that I call them idiots is because Zetetic astronomy has incorrect mathematical formulae
No, yeah, you've mentioned this.
that defend the belief of flat Earth through
Yeah.
disapproval of measurements that we can make, like
Yeah.
the Earth being round, because you can measure the curve, right? You
Yeah.
can measure it with a formula. But Zetetic astronomy gives you the wrong formula. It gives you the
Sure.
formula, which is, I think it's 8 inches per meter squared, which will end up giving you a parabola. Which means that if you're trying to measure curvature over any great distance, it'll work in a small scale. But over any great distance, it will give you the wrong information, meaning that it proves your theory that it's wrong because you have wrong information. So, but that's a basis for a lot of this. I think that's where this really all began.
Yeah, well, to me, something you said at the beginning is, I think a lot of this is just that people who've started some of these movements are just trolls, and they have gotten people attached to their outlandish ideals that they didn't expect, perhaps. So you end up with these followings of things which maybe were never really intended to be followed.
Yeah, well, part of the reason I say that is also because some of the actual, flat Earth community, it's been divided. Because there are certain members, and I'm sure you've seen some of these experiments, like the one where somebody did the 2 holes in the boards, and then they accidentally proved the curve,
Oh yeah.
and then just didn't acknowledge it in the video. People say that people like that are shills, that they're doing it as like a sting operation from the globe head is what they call us, the globe head side, to try and debunk this from the inside. And another one, a really famous guy, ended up from his community getting a $20,000 gyroscope to measure the lack of angular change, and ended up measuring a 15-degree change per hour.
Yeah.
And so that's a meme now, that he did this in a documentary where he was like, oh, he measured it. It's like, 15 degrees per hour. And he wasn't happy about it, but people believe that he's like a sting operation now. It's weird.
Yeah. I saw a video some years ago, and I think I don't know whether it was intentional or not, but he ended up basically proving with a fair amount of accuracy that the gravity. I mean, there's no contention around this, but he sort of demonstrated it for himself that the pull of gravity. I'm going to use the word advisedly now. Pull of gravity changes not only from where you are, but how far away from the Earth you happen to be. And he did this with a very, very, very accurate scale and a known weight. So you can get these standardized, 1 gram or whatever. I probably was some number of grams. And he just went different places, built certain buildings, and in certain areas where the ground are, you go on top of a mountain.
Yeah.
And you've got two different things. You've got distance from the center being a negative, but you've got a lot of mass underneath you. That's if the density is higher than the average, then you may get a higher gravitational reading. And so he demonstrated this using really no other science but a scale and a known weight. It was pretty interesting to hear. So anyway, and the one thing on gravity is I saw a graphic. Somebody drew this using sort of the math of it, and the farther away from the center of the supposed flat Earth you got, the more angular gravity would pull at you.
Yeah, that's a weird one.
Yeah, and that actually disproves the flat Earth. That's how it's used. It's used as a disproval.
If gravity exists and the Earth is flat, then those cannot coincide, which is why they fight against gravity so hard.
Right, because you'd be the farther from the center you got, the
your feet
gravity
would be
pulling
towards the center.
through all of that additional material.
Yeah.
But none of it makes sense.
And stuff like that leads to the concave, the hollow Earth theory, that the Earth is actually concave, and centrifugal force is what's keeping us on the ground.
Oh yeah, now you got the whole curvature problem back.
Yeah, then
congratulations.
But now you could see mountains above you.
Have you seen there are some sci-fi programs? Interstellar, I think, is one where they got this giant ship and everybody lives on the inside surface.
It's a great idea for a spaceship.
Yeah,
but
it's funny. I listen to, probably I'm like a lot of people now have seen way too many videos on these things, but I did see one that talks about the difficulty of using rotation as a substitute for gravity. It's okay, but it's not perfect, and there's some problems with it. So anyway, and then not the least of which is getting all this mass
to spin.
On it. Well, and then do you have a bearing at each end, or does the whole thing have to spin? So, and a lot of these sci-fi things, you've got fixed points on either side that don't rotate, and a body that rotates in the middle. Well, you have to have essentially frictionless bearings on either side.
Oh yeah,
so that this doesn't spin.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't do that. You spin everything up.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't be perfect by any means. So anyway.
Watch a little bit more.
Okay, so and there's poor Alex Jones, who's owes $1 billion to the people of Sandy Hook.
Isn't it like 40 billion?
No, I think it's $1 billion.
Oh, okay.
Which is more than enough, right? If you're the objective was to bankrupt him, that'll do it, but they'll challenge the award, and the award will get cut. That's what happens.
Yeah.
Kingdom will strive in vain to dislodge them, and what is more, they are too cowardly to attempt it. The above is so startling an exposure that the public press is ashamed to announce it, although the globular theory has been shown to be a pagan superstition, unscriptural, irrational, unscientific, and physically impossible.
Pagan. And
the true cosmogony of the universe should be the primary subject, and one which ought to take precedence of every other on which the mind of a child can possibly be engaged. Ignorance of its true nature is a gross scandal on all connected with any phase of education, either religious or secular, and the imposition of a fraud which the intelligent child soon learns to detect exerts a positive injury on the mind all through life. At the
Positive
present
injury on the
moment,
mind.
there is not a teacher in the kingdom who would venture to prove himself familiar with the most elementary principles of natural science, and yet the writer is abused for declaring the world is full of knaves or dunces. Even savages never boast of being wiser than they are, or teach their...
So,
Fine.
that's very... What is it? Is it Dunning-Kruger? Is that... He says even savages never boast about being wiser than they are. Dunning-Kruger,
I don't know.
100%. The just above the biggest idiots are the people who brag the most that they know the most. So
Oh yeah, well, that's always a problem.
I have a
Those
feeling that the rest of this is just going to be him lambasting
Yeah.
people who believe it. I see a little bit of Neil deGrasse Tyson here, but
He's just going to be one of the dunces.
yeah, I think we can call it on that video there.
Have a nice day. Oh, there you go. Now I'm looking at myself as it looks like from your screen. No, that's just me. Did you delink the? Are you not streaming? Oh, there you go. Never mind. That's just all of a sudden
yeah.
I got myself in the frame.
I dropped the stream in the webpage.
That's cool. That's cool. All right. So bottom line is we're not buying flat Earth. We just think there is no evidence, none whatsoever,
Absolutely no empirical evidence
that has any kind of science behind it, as science as we know it,
science as it is defined,
as it would define itself.
They begin by misdefining science as what you can see and touch and hear, which is not what it is. It is a process of proving and disproving theorems. But
well, and by the way, my computer is taking a picture of me, actually 24 of them every second, but I'm not looking through it. So it is, I'm observing.
That's been debunked.
Okay, all right. Okay.
So
I understand that cameras can steal your soul. Did you know that? If somebody takes your picture, it's a native somebody. There were, maybe it's just a movie trope. I don't know, but
I think that was a belief at one point.
It probably was, and it may have, who knows where it came from. But anyway, enough of that. That's
there was just
always fun. Sad that people believe that, but it is what it is. People say the same thing about Christianity.
Yeah. There's just a little bit I wanted to touch on before we go. We're almost out of time, but
all right.
Okay. So I've been experimenting with AI art with Midjourney. I've gone through a number of different services, and I'm impressed in general with the state of it. Yeah. Midjourney especially, unbelievably impressed. Now, we're going to bring on Chris to talk about this stuff at length, get an artist's perspective on it, but I just want to touch on it here, a little bit of a teaser sort of thing.
Okay.
So, if I were an artist right now, I would be terrified.
Okay.
Being that I have hired artists before as a writer, and sometimes the expense is more than I can bear, and they can be very expensive. I get it. There's a lot of time involved. There's a lot of skill and practice, and yet, with a small subscription fee and a couple of minutes, I had these images created that blew me away on a level I've very rarely seen from humans. And I know it is an amalgam of things that people have made, but considering the amount of art that people have drawn and the expense of some of that art, you're getting a very high median of quality, right? If people are paying $10,000 for an image or something, and then that is added into this system, now for relatively cheap, you've got the quality of very expensive art and sort of mediocre art mixing together and prioritizing the good stuff to give you very good quality items that understand what you want, which is It's, I'm not scared of AI taking over the world, but my goodness, I think artists have good reason to be scared that it will take over their jobs. There are certain parts of writing that I think certain fields in writing that should be equally scared. I think journalism could very easily get washed, uh, just based on the fact that it's all biasy and tropey and massively reproduced anyway. All that a lot of online, and I don't mean like newscasting and stuff like that, and actual good journalism, but I would say a vast majority of online journalism is regurgitating things that are not fact checked. They are not terribly thought about. It's really they read a couple things and then they mush them together and here you go. And stuff like ChatGPT can do that faster, and it can aggregate more information at a much higher speed. And you had mentioned earlier that two college professors had to step down.
Yeah, they had to back away from their responsibilities because they used chat
ChatGPT.
GPT to draft some communication about an issue on campus with respect to diversity. And at the bottom of the message, there was a tag that came from the software
Yeah.
from the model that said, produced by blah 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 as of such a date, and with other information. And so they didn't even bother to clean it up. They just put in 3 or 4 or 5 words, blew out this document, sent it out as their own, and so plagiarized it basically, which is a funny way to think about using, think about plagiarism in the world of AI, right? And apparently the university took it pretty seriously and took some action against them. Yeah,
Yeah. But it makes you wonder how many people are doing this and are cleaning it up.
already. Yeah,
Because I know it's done for social media. There are a lot of social media influencers who put prompts into chat AIs that will fix them up. They will alter them.
yeah,
They'll make 100 different variations. The person will go
yeah,
and pick their favorites, and then they'll schedule out their posts.
yeah.
It's a recommended method.
Well, here's my question to you. If I were in the academic business and writing articles, and not plagiarizing off of AI, say, I'm going to use the word plagiarizing. I don't know what else to call it. You didn't write it, somebody else wrote it.
Yeah. Well,
If there,
something wrote it.
well, whatever. You did not write it. That's
Right.
that's my point. Um, if they wouldn't start embedding certain patterns which would be undetectable to the human reader, that would identify it as an AI written article. I'll give you the best example I can think of is if you try to take a photocopy, like on a Xerox machine, a copier, try to copy a check, the word void will appear all over the place because they've done something, very tiny little printing that all copiers read. And so they have made certain documents impossible to copy by normal means. Or it's like metadata, right?
Yeah.
It was, our mutual friend Steve Williams tells a story about when he was auditioning. I can't think of a better word for Apple for a sort of a beginning, a entry level design job. And a couple of people competing against him went out and basically got the images they were supposed to create from scratch. They copied them from the internet, right? He was supposed to make like a little button or like an app icon or something.
Yeah.
And he did it from scratch, and he passed, and almost everybody else failed because in the metadata were identifiers. So
Yeah.
I wonder out loud if there won't be some convention that will arise when this thing becomes more mature that will allow third parties. When I wrote my dissertation, I had to pay to run it through a machine that looked for plagiarism.
Yeah.
And
Well,
it identified every single quote, every et cetera, et cetera. So
the thing is, though, is it's like the evolution of ranged weaponry and general weaponry and armor, is that
yeah,
it'll get swung back, right? Right now, it's the
yeah.
Wild West. There is no legislation because
No,
technically
right.
anything anything produced by AI or produced by an animal, right? You know the thing, if you put a bunch of monkeys in a room with
With
typewriter, eventually they're
typewriters,
all Shakespeare.
eventually,
You
yeah.
could not, even if all those monkeys were yours, you could not copyright that because it was not created by humans. Same thing with
Okay.
AI. Right now, there are no ways to technically copy. Well, there's a few very odd loopholes to
Mhm.
copyright anything generated by AI. The algorithm writer and owner has the highest degree of ownership, but it's
Mhm.
nothing that comes to the level of legal plagiarism or copyright at this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
It's just it's sort of an argumentative ownership
Right.
case.
Right.
There are some rare exceptions, which are if you have some degree of ownership, and this is something that I think is good for some people. If you have some degree of ownership, whether it's that you're renting the algorithm or paying a subscription, and you use it in another piece of work that is more broadly copywritten or trademarked,
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
it is included in the umbrella. So I think book covers are included in that umbrella. So a book cover is a part of the entire published work, meaning that this uncopyrightable work is now a component of a greater work. But I'm sure legislation will be written and rules will be made that these, like you said, that there will be some sort of metadata watermark put in. But then will come, that's the armor. What's the next weapon? Well, the next weapon is people figuring out how to modify metadata, which you can do. You can
Yeah.
modify metadata. You can modify
Yeah.
anything that's written by code.
Yeah.
And so eventually there will be probably services that are dedicated. Now, maybe they're illicit services, but they will be dedicated to removing these things.
Right. Well, there'll be some kind of code key that's encrypted.
Yeah.
That's at the end of the day, it all comes down to encryption code of some sort,
Yeah.
you know.
And it's
So
always back and forth. You're going to have the encryptors and the decryptors, and they're going
yeah.
to be fighting forever.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah.
And, we just hit an hour, and I think we've got through a fair amount. So, to anybody who watched, thank you for coming. I hope you had a good time. Today was very different than usual, but I actually had a lot of fun.
This was cool. You know, I love this stuff. We we started out this series talking about, the politics of the day or whatever else happens to be, but I think as we move on, we'll get into, I think, some more interesting, not that politics aren't interesting, but
Yeah,
everybody's
but
talking about them,
and
and maybe some other things.
they're also a bit depressing at times. It makes
Yeah.
you sort of question the state of humanity a lot and stuff like this. While yes, it makes me question the state of humanity only on a small degree because I know this is a relatively small community.
Right.
I
Right.
think it's very entertaining and it makes you think a little bit. Well, why do you believe what you believe? And then here we have our
Mhm.
evidence. So
Right.
and so yeah, but thank you all for watching. I hope you all have a good day, evening,